It's a mini garland.
Giridhari's garland.
Nama Shreshtam Manumapi Sachi Putram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Grajam Uruparim Maturim Gostavatim Radhakundam Girivaram Ho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi. A particularly apt verse for today, given that today is the appearance day of Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, his 95th, isn't it? Appearance anniversary. So we can imagine 5 years from today that's going to be the big one, the 100th anniversary. Today's the 95th. So, yes, very special day known as Avirbhav Tithi. Tithi meaning the lunar day, Avirbhav meaning the appearance. So the lunar anniversary of Gurudev's appearance. What is the Tithi? Dvitiya. Is it not? Krishna Dvitiya. Yesterday was the full moon, right? Today is Krishna Dvitiya. Gurudev is born on Krishna Dvitiya. Yeah, so very special day. And what to say? I think we're going to have a glorification session for Gurudev at lunchtime. So we'll read a few verses today from Chaitanya Charitamrita as usual. And we will get stuck into glorification of Gurudev at lunchtime with Tridandi Maharaj, who's coming. But we'll read Chaitanya Charitamrita and then we'll read some revealed truth. Standard. So where are we here? We're in the explanations of the Atmaram verse. Now this is the penultimate chapter of the Madhya Lila. 25 chapters in the Madhya Lila, and the last four chapters, excepting the final chapter, are known as Sanatan Shiksha. Maybe there's 5 chapters actually. Perhaps there's 5 chapters, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Anyway, 4 or 5. Known as Sanatan Shiksha, which is Shiksha meaning instruction, Sanatan referring to Sanatan Goswami. So the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatan Goswami are known as Sanatan Shiksha. And they are a fairly comprehensive overview of Krishna Tattva, or Bhakti Tattva, roughly translated, science of Krishna consciousness. Preceding Sanatan Shiksha is a section called Rupa Shiksha. And it's the same thing. Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami. And the same location in India, in Prayag, which is now known as Allahabad. Varanasi and Prayag. Mahaprabhu's instructions to Rupa Goswami were a little more concise. Very brilliant. Some of the Sanatan Shiksha is a little difficult to understand for some people sometimes, and it gets a little technical as well. But Rupa Shiksha is very clear, very systematic. Not that Sanatan Shiksha is not, but for me Rupa Shiksha is kind of simple and it's introductory. It's clear, concise, systematic, and so that precedes Sanatan Shiksha. But both of them are towards the tail end of the Madhya Lila, which is the middle section, the middle account in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The account of this 6 years of Mahaprabhu's life, from taking sannyas until he had finished his travelling and settled in Puri. So from age 24 till 30. And the last 18 years of Mahaprabhu's life is known as the Antya Lila. So the 6 years. So this is towards this section that we're reading now, as Mahaprabhu is in his late 20s. maybe about 30 years old. So still fairly young man. But he's instructing Sanatana Goswami, who has the context here. We'll recap because it's been a little while since we were reading this. The context is that Sanatana Goswami was employed as the prime minister of Nawab Hussain Shah, who is the ruler of Bengal, modern-day Bengal, and the geographical area that is modern-day Bengal. And his two chief ministers were Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. So Sanatana Goswami was the prime minister, and Rupa Goswami was the finance minister. So they're occupying pretty much what we consider the top posts in a governmental cabinet. And they were both just young men. They were in their 20s, so it's obviously testimony to the brilliance of these men that they were, these young men, that they were employed as the top cabinet ministers in the government of this Hussain Shah. Now, due to at that time, they came from very good stock, we could say, high-class Brahminical lineage. And they were naturally very skilled, we could say perhaps genius, and of course they were availed of very good quality education. But due to their association with the Muslim government, they had been somewhat ostracized by the traditional Brahminical community. So they were they weren't fully Muslims, but they were definitely not, they were considered like contaminated Hindus, you could say. So they had even adopted Muslim names. Rupa Goswami was Dabir Khas and Sanatana Goswami was Sakara Malika. But of course, they, as we know, they were dissatisfied with their position in the Muslim government, even though they had access to all of the perks and benefits that you would expect from a high political office, plus more. It seems that they were in command or in possession of eye-watering sums of money at their disposal. It seems that at that time there was more flexibility. I mean, politicians have ways of making money beyond their political salaries now. But it seems back then it was almost like accepted that if you were in a position of power, it was more autocratic. The world was the kind of the benefits, financial and otherwise, you could get from occupying a powerful position were not as capped as they are today. And we read about this when they are plotting their escape or their release from their governmental service, and Sanatana Goswami is bribing his jailkeeper with colossal sums of money, thousands of gold coins. Now each gold coin is a significant amount of money. So we're talking what is the equivalent of millions of dollars today to bribe his way out of prison. He's incarcerated when the king realizes that Sanatana Goswami is not being straight up with him. And on the pretext of ill health, he is actually discussing the Bhagavatam with a group of brahmanas. The king sends his physician round to check on him, and he says, well, he's in good health, there's nothing wrong with him. So the king himself comes round and says, look, you're not being honest with me, what's going on? And ends up putting him into prison. And he bribes his way out, whereas prior to that, Rupa Goswami had made his escape, and they both head west towards Vrindavan, where Rupa Goswami first meets Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is returning from Vrindavan, and then later he is followed, some weeks later, by Sanatana Goswami. And in both instances, Mahaprabhu sits down and specifically gives them instruction in Krishna consciousness. Rupa Goswami for 10 days at Dasashwamedh Ghat, and Sanatana Goswami for 2 months, 2 solid months every day, personal tuition at Varanasi or Prayag. That they're in the same area. So this instruction, 2-month long marathon of spiritual personal tuition from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, as we said, it's called the Sanatana Shiksha, and it occupies 5 chapters, of which we are on the last chapter called Explanations of the Atmaram verse. Now the Atmaram verse, of course, is Atmaramas Chamunayo Nir Grantap Yurukrame Korvadya Ahoitakim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Guno Harahi. That's the famous Atmaram verse. There are 3 sittings of the Atmaram verse, or 3 explanations given in Madhya Lila, or 3 places in which it is expressed. The first, of course, is towards the beginning of the Madhya Lila, when Mahaprabhu arrives in Jagannath Puri and he has his pastimes with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gives several explanations of the Atmaram verse, which in itself, to be able to give multiple explanations of one verse is considered very intellectually adept. You have to be quite an accomplished scholar for that. So he is impressed with himself, but then Mahaprabhu doubles it, gives twice as many explanations, and leaves Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya somewhat speechless. He says, this is not human, there's something else going on here. This guy, this young sannyasi who I'm trying to coach so that he doesn't fall down from his new sannyas ashram. I'll give him some solid Vedantic conception. And he said, well, he's not who I initially thought he was. There's something else going on. And part of that realization process was the explanation of the Atmaram verse. So that was the first sitting. And then this is the second one, where Sanatana Goswami says to Mahaprabhu, look, I heard of this famous explication, like this breaking down, unpacking of the Atmaram verse that you gave to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Can you please repeat this for me? I want to hear it personally from you. And this is the last chapter of Sanatana Shiksha, where Mahaprabhu is then repeating with further, even more exhaustively, to Sanatana Goswami. And then in the next chapter, which is called the liberation of the residents of Varanasi or something, the residents of the Varanasi become Vaishnavas, we'll see again that this Atmaram verse is again expressed by Mahaprabhu, again this time at the behest of the Mayavadi sannyasis who become new recruits. We're familiar with the pastimes of how Prakashanand, Varanasi was a Mayavadi town, essentially. It wasn't so much a place of devotees, so much bhaktas. It was more, there was a culture of Shankara's Vedanta being practiced there. And so when Mahaprabhu arrives, he's mocked, and actually he's criticized by the leader of the sannyasis, Prakashanand Saraswati. But of course, later that changes, and he ends up becoming a devotee himself. Then some people were speculating that, Prakashanand, he became Prabodhanand Saraswati, but that's an unauthorized piece of speculation. So then the Atmaram verse is again expressed to Prakashanand Saraswati. And why is it so important? This is the most quoted verse or the most, you could say, perhaps there's other verses in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that are quoted 2, 3, 4 times, but not as much attention is given to any other verse as is the Atmaram verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. If any verse, what we could say is that in the Madhya Lila, there's certainly no verse given as much attention as the Atmaram verse. And the Madhya Lila is the preaching Lila of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right? The Adi Lila is Mahaprabhu's growing up. Actually, the preaching did start towards the end of the Adi Lila. Gurudev says that when Nityananda Prabhu arrives, that's when Mahaprabhu's preaching begins. And then, in order to further expand the preaching, Mahaprabhu takes sannyas in order to help those with a incorrect conception of Mahaprabhu. He takes sannyas so they're able to give him the respect needed to hear his message, to make themselves receptive to his mercy, have the correct attitude. So Mahaprabhu's preaching Leela is largely covered in Madhya Lila, and this verse is the most quoted and the most covered in Madhya Lila, Atmaramas Jamunayo, because what it does is it establishes the supremacy of the personal conception of God over that of any impersonal conception. So Atmaram means someone that is self-satisfied, Atma meaning the self, and Rama meaning that they are self-satisfied. There is no distraction, there is no temptation to any of the multitude of attractions that this Maya Shakti offers. So they're somewhat transcendental to the Maya Shakti. And self-satisfied. Nothing ripples, nothing disturbs their consciousness. But when they are somehow exposed to the Leela of Bhagavan, then their equilibrium is disturbed in a positive way. So it's not being attracted to anything lower, but just when they thought that they'd achieved the ultimate level of spiritual realization and achievement, then along comes some contact with Krishna Lila, and they again feel that there's a new vista of spiritual experience opening up for them that previously they were not. Previously they were ignorant to, it can be said. Not to use that term in too much of a disparaging fashion, but they were not aware. The impersonal conception of God can seem fulfilling in itself. That the very essence of reality has been achieved. There's nothing more to achieve. So then the personal itam bhuta guno harahi. So the supernatural, the super attractive qualities of Hari, even those people that have achieved God, achieved perfection, they go a step further. So in a sense, the Krishna conception is like beyond God. It's God, and then you take a step further. So because of it, this verse establishes the absolute supremacy of the beauty of Krishna, the beauty of the personal conception of God, which is the very purpose of Mahaprabhu's inner, internal objective for appearing is to So Mahaprabhu's internal objective is that of Srimati Radharani, tasting her love for Krishna, tasting Krishna's beauty and tasting her happiness, those three items. And the external one is, of course, to propagate the Yuga Dharma. So both of these, we can say, are tied into this verse, because one, how can, the ecstatic feelings of Radharani be properly described unless that the beauty of Krishna is superior to any impersonal conception, which is what this verse describes, and also in a preaching capacity, which is the propagation of the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, is the same. The mantra, the Nam, Rup, Gun and Leela are the same. So this verse is describing the supremacy of Krishna's Leela. It's identical to the Nam, the spreading of the Yuga Dharma. So it's a very appropriate verse. Anyway, perhaps we should, enough of me, we should do some reading now, shall we? So we'll start at text Mahaprabhu is talking to Sanatana. He talks about the Leela of Narada Muni liberating Mrigarhi. Okay, we'll just continue text 247. Madhya Leela chapter 4, text 247. Kali haite tumi ye mrigadi mariba pratame mariba ardha mara nakariba. I beg you that from this day on you will kill animals completely and not leave them half dead. So Narada Muni has discovered on his wanderings, he's bumped into the hunter Mrigarhi. Mrigarhi was not just a hunter, like a subsistence hunter, but he was sadistic in the sense that he liked to injure the animals and then watch them as they died slowly in suffering. Very sadistic. Vyadha kahe. So, and Narada Muni is telling him, look, at least just give them a quick death. Don't torture them. Vyadha kahe kiba dana magila amare ardha marila kiba haya tahaka hamore. The hunter replied, my dear sir, what are you asking of me? What is wrong with the animals lying there, half killed? Will you please explain this to me? Narada kahe ardha marile jiva payavyata jive dukkha ditecha tomara haibe aiche avasta. Narada Muni replied, if you leave the animals half dead, you are purposefully giving them pain. Therefore, you have to suffer in retaliation. Vyadha tumi jiva mara alpa parada tomara kardatana diya mara e papa apara. Narada Muni continued, my dear hunter, your business is killing animals. That is a slight offense on your part. But when you consciously give them unnecessary pain by leaving them half dead, you incur very great sins. Karatiya tumi yata marila jivere tarataiche toma marebe janma janmantare. Narada Muni continued, all the animals that you have killed and given unnecessary pain will kill you one after the other in your next life and in life after life. Narada Sange Vyadera Mana Parashana Haila Tanravakya Suni Mane Baya Upajila. In this way, through the association of the great sage Narada Muni, the hunter was a little convinced of his sinful activity, and he therefore became somewhat afraid due to his offenses. Vyadhakahe balya haite e amara karma kemane tarimu muni pamara adama. The hunter then admitted that he was convinced of his sinful activity, and he said, I have been taught this business from my very childhood. Now I am wondering, how can I become free from these unlimited volumes of sinful activity? E papa yaya moda kemana upaye nistara karaha mode padon tomara paye. The hunter continued, my dear sir, Please tell me how I can be relieved from the reactions of my sinful life. Now I fully surrender unto you and fall down at your lotus feet. Please deliver me from sinful reactions. Narada kahe yade dada amara vachana tabe se karite pari tomara mochana. Narada Muni assured the hunter, you listen to my instructions. I shall find the way you can be liberated. Vyadha kahe ye kaha se ta kariba, Narada kahe danuka banga tabe se kahiba. The hunter then said, my dear sir, whatever you say I shall do. Narada immediately ordered him, first of all, break your bow, then I shall tell you what is to be done. Vyadha kahe danuka bangile vartiba kemane, Narada kahe ame anadiba pratidine. The hunter replied, if I break my bow, how shall I maintain myself? Narada Muni replied, do not worry, I shall supply all your food every day. Danuka bangi vyadha tanra charane padila, Tara utana narada upadesha kaila. Being thus assured by the great sage Narada Muni, the hunter broke his bow, immediately fell down at the saint's lotus feet, and fully surrendered. After this, Narada Muni raised him with his hands and gave him instructions for spiritual advancement. Danu Kabangi. Danu is a bow. Danu, Danus. Same time, there's sign Sagittarius, is Danus. Those are the bow, right? You have the centaur with the bow. Danu. Garegiya Brahmani Deha Yata Achedana Eka Vastra Pari Bahira Hauduijana. Narada Muni then advised the hunter, return home and distribute whatever riches you have to the pure Brahmanas who know the absolute truth. After distributing all your riches to the Brahmanas, both you and your wife should leave home, taking only one cloth to wear. Nadi tire eka kane kutira kariya, tada age eka pendi tulasi ropia. Narada Muni continued, leave your home and go to the river. There you should construct a small cottage, and in front of the cottage you should grow a tulsi plant on a raised platform. Tulasi parikrama kara tulasi sevana, nirantara Krishna nama kariha kirtana. After planting the tulsi tree before your house, you should daily circumambulate that tulsi plant, serve her by giving her water and other things, and continuously chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Ame tomaya bahu ana patai mudine, se ana labhe yata kau duijane. Narada Muni continued, I shall send sufficient food to you both every day. You can take as much food as you want. Tabe se mrigadi tine narada sushta kaila, sushta hana mrigadi tine dana palaila. The three animals that were half killed were then brought to their consciousness by the sage Narad. Indeed, the animals got up and swiftly fled. Dekiya vyadera mane haila chamatkara, gare gela vyadha guruke kare namaskara. When the hunter saw the half-killed animals flee, he was certainly struck with wonder. Chamatkara. He then offered his respectful obeisances to sage Narad and returned home. Yatastane narada gela vyadha gare aila naradera upadeshi sakala karila. After all this, Narada Muni went to his destination. After the hunter returned home, he exactly followed the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. Grame dvane haila vyadha vaishnava haila, gramera loka saba ana anite lagila. The news that the hunter had become a Vaishnav spread all over the village. Indeed, all the villagers brought alms and presented them to the Vaishnav, who was formerly a hunter. Ekadina ana ane da sabesha jane, dine tata laya yata kaya due jane. In one day, enough food was brought for 10 or 20 people, but the hunter and his wife would accept only as much as they could eat. Ekadina narada kahe sunaha parvate amara ekashishya ache chalaha dekite. One day, while speaking to his friend Parvata Muni, Narada Muni requested him to go with him to see his disciple, the hunter. Tabe dui rishi aila se vyadhastane dura haite vyadha paila gurura darashane. When the saintly sages came to the hunter's place, the hunter could see them coming from a distance. Aste vyaste dana ashe patanahi paya patera pipilika iti uti dare paya. With great alacrity, the hunter began to run toward his spiritual master. But he could not fall down and offer obeisances because ants were running hither and thither around his feet. Hither and thither. Alacrity. What is alacrity? Enthusiasm. Yeah? Alacrity is enthusiasm, isn't it? Keenness. Hither and thither. So the ants were running around. Yeah. Dandavat stane pipili kare dekya vastre stana jade pare dandavat hana. Seeing the ants, the hunter whisked them away with a piece of cloth. After thus clearing the ants from the ground, he fell down flat to offer his obeisances. Narada kahe vyadha e nahaya ascharya hari bhaktye himsa shunya haya saduvarya. Narada Muni said, "My dear hunter, such behavior is not at all astonishing. A man in devotional service is automatically non-violent. He is the best of gentlemen." Etana yadbhuta vyadha tava himsadayo gunaha hari bhakto pravrittaye nate syu paratapinaha. O hunter, good qualities like non-violence, which you have developed, are not very astonishing, for those engaged in the Lord's devotional service are never inclined to give pain to others because of envy. Tabe se vyadha don hare angane anila kusasana ani don hare bhaktye vasaila. The hunter then received both the great sages in the courtyard of his house. He spread out a straw mat for them to sit upon. With great devotion, he begged them to sit down. So we'll finish there. The stories, histories, offer hope. Sometimes people can, in the spiritual practices, people can tend to be too difficult on themselves, to beat themselves up. Or sometimes they can even misconceive of the higher sentiments of Karpanya that are expressed by high Vaishnavas, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur expressed a lot of Karpanya in his nature. These songs of like lamentation can be difficult to properly comprehend unless one is actually experiencing that level of spiritual sentiment. Appreciating them theoretically can be a little difficult. But also there's a tendency on the spiritual path to be a little too hard on oneself. And these stories, such as this famous one of Mrigarhi, they give people hope that even someone who's engaged in torturing animals, it doesn't get much lower than that, intentionally getting pleasure from causing pain, great pain. We're not just talking maybe a little bit of emotional abrasiveness or whatever, but physically injuring animals and watching them slowly die in agony, that's about as low as it almost as low as it gets. And yet he is turned into a saint through the association of Narada Muni. And there are other instances, like, what is another famous one? Valmiki. Valmiki, the author of the Ramayana, was a brigand. He was what you might call a highwayman. He would waylay people on the trail and rob them and hurt them and steal their belongings. And he ends up becoming a saint of the highest caliber and authoring the immortal Ramayana. So that's one poignant lesson in these stories of great spiritual transformation. And of course, this comes about through the association of a devotee of a particular caliber that can impart that spiritual purification, via whose association that spiritual transformation can take place. And of course, there's a process of surrender involved. We can see in this story, faith is first required. Narada Muni tells him, look, you break your bow. And the hunter's like, I don't want to break my bow. My bow is like the tool of my trade. But he takes that leap of faith and he breaks his bow and he makes that change. That's an act of surrender. And of course, the Gita verse describes as tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevna. Pranipat means to surrender. So that's the first point, is that you have to have a little faith, and then the act of surrender always pays dividends. We can see in this case that transformation of Ragrari from a cruel, sadistic hunter to a gentle saint, who, the point being made that when he is revisited by Narada Muni, he takes special care to brush the ants out of the way. So he goes from being an animal torturer to someone who doesn't commit violence even to the smallest of insects. Right, we'll read a little from Revealed Truth by Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. So this is the section entitled Pure Devotion, the chapter entitled Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Mood of Devotion, and the sub-chapter Cleaning the Mirror of the Mind. In his Shikshastakam, Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya Dev has explained the conception and mood needed to purely chant the Lord's holy name. In his first verse, he glorified Harinam Sankirtan and explained the effects of its power. Chaito darpana marjanam bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam shreya kaidava chandrika vitaranam vidyavaru jivanam anandam buddhivadanam pratiparam purnam ritasvadanam sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Here Mahaprabhu explains very cleanly and clearly that the first necessity for everyone is Chaito Darpana Marjanam, cleaning the mirror of the mind. When we look into a dirty mirror, we cannot see our figure, but when it is cleaned, we can see ourselves clearly. When the Jiva soul is conditioned by the illusory environment, he forgets himself and his transcendental form as an eternal servitor of Lord Krishna. The dust of illusion covers the mirror of the Jiva soul's mind and stops him from seeing clearly. Mahaprabhu teaches that the first step in spiritual life is to realize our true nature. When all the dust of illusion is removed through the practice of Harinam Sankirtan and the mirror of our mind is clean, we can clearly see ourselves and our proper existence. That is called Atma Shakshatkar, self-realization. Atma Shakshatkar. When that comes to us, we will see that we are eternal Jiva souls and that Krishna is always living with us. We will see that we are members of the transcendental service world. Mahaprabhu says that by chanting the holy name, we will get relief from the illusory environment. Everything will be revealed to us, and we will realize ourselves' natural property. full connection with the ocean of nectar that is the Lord's eternal service. This is a very clean conception and the gist of religious advice. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. Harinam Sankirtan is the supreme practice and will be glorious everywhere. If we can practice Harinam Sankirtan under the guidance of a real Vaishnav, it will be the best path and opportunity to reach our spiritual destiny. Through Krishna Sankirtan we will get everything. So chant the Lord's holy names and clean your heart. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Gurudev Avirbhav Mahamahotsava Ki Jai. And just a reminder for anyone tuning in to watch, is we're going to have Gurudev Katha at lunchtime. We didn't go into that this morning because Tridandi Swami is coming to visit and he will talk on the glories of Gurudev, and we'll have other contributors as well. So that will be at 12:30 today. All right. So one of you Prabhus want to say Hari Haraya? Someone's going to say Hari Haraya.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohana.
Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra. Yadadara Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatana Bhata Raghunatha. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhata Dasa Raghunatha. Jai Gosai Gauri Charana Vandana. Jahoti Vignana Shavista Purana. Jai Gosai Jai Muritara Dasa. Tasvara Padarena Mora Panchagasa. Adara Charane Sivi Bhakta Sane Basa. Janame Janane More Avilasa. Jai Gosai Jame Braje Kole Basa. Radha Krishna Nita Lila Korila Prakasha. Ananda Bolo Hari Vaja Vrindavana. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Majayamana. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Koriyasa. Hari Nam Sankirtana Koi Naratamodasa. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Nande Hari Bol.
Jai, Jai Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Sundar Radha Giridhar Jyoti Jai Jai Vishnu Bhakti Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Shivaji Bhakti Raka Krikhade Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Rupa Guru Garg Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Danta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Samveda Vaishnava Mandala Ki Jai Samveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat Ki Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Abhirva Mahotsava Ki Jai.